St. John's is a small town about 4 hours northeast of the valley. As you drive in, the only billboard advertises for Denture Adventure on one side and the 7th Street Laundry and Showers on the other. The phone number is the same for both. That's because the same guy, Tom Elam, is running them out of the same building.
We just make the dentures.
Are you licensed to do that?
You don't have to be licensed in the state of Arizona.
Turns out he's right.
We're a dental lab. We just make the prosthetic. We don't go into the mouth. We don't work in the mouth.
Elam showing us around his lab.
And then we pour it into stone, and then we build the prosthetic on a stone.
How were you trained to do this?
Well, I worked for a dentist for years. In my 20s, my father-in-law was a dentist.
In Arizona, that's enough because the state doesn't regulate dental labs and their techs. That means no one is checking Elam's criminal background. Arizona's Family Investigates, finding police arrested him for selling meth out of a laundromat in 2014. Elam also charged with trafficking in stolen property and possession of drug paraphernalia. Court records reveal as part of a plea deal, Elam pleaded guilty to all 3 charges and got 7 years probation. Some might find that kind of strange, to run the lab out of here.
How do you mean by strange?
Well, that it's the same
lab. Well, that was all false imprisonment anyways. It was actually for some solar panels.
We're dealing with healthcare and dirty laundry in the same building.
All of this is why Dr. Brennan Hancock, a dentist in St. John, says he reached out to the State Board of Dental Examiners.
There's not that quality assurance of that dentist watching these medical appliances.
The State Dental Board declining to talk to Arizona's Family Investigates on camera, but they confirmed they looked into it and that Elam is not licensed. The board says, quote, "We have no jurisdiction over dental labs. Unfortunately, the information we were provided did not indicate the lab technician was doing dentistry." Hancock also going to police.
I can see it. I understand his frustration. The law is complex.
That's why St. John's Police Chief Lance Spivey says he referred the case to the Arizona Attorney General's office.
Did it seem like the AG's office took the complaint seriously when you reached out?
Absolutely, they did.
The AG's office looking into it, finding no wrongdoing. The lack of regulation is frustrating, but not surprising to Bennett Napier with the National Association of Dental Laboratories.
It's a consumer safety issue. So, the devices that are being prescribed and placed in the patient's mouth are a medical device.
He argues more states need to license and regulate dental labs. Right now, only 13 do, but not Arizona.
If there's something that goes wrong, there's no recourse for that.
Tell me why you do this.
The way to help the public out. This is one of the poorest counties in Arizona, and there's a lot of people that need a lot of help.
Elam claims his products cost a third of what a dentist would charge and that those who come to him don't have insurance and can't afford a dentist. We asked Hancock about that.
So I feel for the community. I feel for the cost of it. There are ways to do it. There are Medicaid programs.
All right, investigator Amy Cutler is joining us now for more on this story. Amy, it was shocking to me to find out how little regulation there is on these dental labs. Was it surprising for you as you were looking into this story to discover that?
It was. In fact, when he said that there were no regulations, I didn't know whether to believe him or not. I had to go back and do some research, and it was really surprising because even the dentist that we spoke to said what he was doing was illegal. So once you talk to the dental board, though, the National Association of Dental Laboratories, and I dug into it a little bit more, you realize that there's no regulation in the state, which is really surprising.
And there's not a lot of regulation when you look across all 50 states. I think you mentioned in the story only 13 states actually license dental labs, so it's actually the majority of states that do not.
No, yeah, you're right. And we've been told from the National Association of Dental Laboratories they're trying to push to get more regulation. So they said in the next couple months, 2 more states will have regulation. That's their hope.
Interesting.
But it's interesting because, you go to the dentist, you have these, dental products made, and you don't realize that there's nobody checking in to see that the quality is there.
Right, and the with drugs, for example, the Food and Drug Administration closely regulates drug manufacturers in the process there. With medical devices, there is a lot of regulation there, but apparently with dentures, no. I want to zoom in on one point that Tom Elam made. He is the owner of Denture Adventure that you focused in on. He talked about the cost and the fact that by doing it his way, it's a lot cheaper. Does he have a point?
He does have a point. You know, he's not paying to be licensed. He hasn't paid to go to all that schooling. His office isn't the typical dental office, and so his costs are less. And he claims he doesn't really make money off the business. He's helping his community. But if you talk to dentists or denturists who are specialized in this, they argue that the quality isn't there and that people, no matter where you live, they should be getting better quality dental products. And that's bottom line.
And it's a little bit concerning to know that you have a former meth lab in the same place as a dental lab, two things that I personally would not want mixed if it were going to go into my mouth. But I mean, what is the argument in favor of regulation? Like, why is it necessary for these things to be regulated in the first place?
Well, what the dentist had told me was compare it to like an appendage. You know, if you lost your arm or your foot and you needed to have a prosthetic made, these are prosthetics, you know, they go in your mouth, and over time, if the right ones aren't made, it can lead to pain, it can lead to shifting in your mouth, and nobody wants that, you know. We rely on our teeth for so much, and so they were saying that, you know, also the concern was if you pull teeth too soon, you know, there's a lot, you know, there's a big change that happens, and dentures aren't necessarily the answer. Quality dentistry is.
Sure. And I imagine too the materials that the dentures are made of themselves might be important. There are certain things you probably want in your mouth, and there's certain things you probably don't want in your mouth. Tell us a little bit more about how Tom Elam operates his business, because it's fascinating. So he says that he doesn't work on anybody's mouth. How does he work? How does this happen?
So basically, he gives people these at-home kits. If you've had like Invisalign or something like that, it's similar to that, where they would take their own moldings, they would bring it back to him, and he would make the dentures. He does some bridges and crowns and that kind of work. So, and then he hired a dental tech to come, so if people are having trouble with the molding or the putty that would be used, she can assist them with that. But he argues he's not doing anything in the mouth, and that's because, of course, he's not licensed.
Not allowed to. Right. Do you have a sense yet, and you may not have gone down this rabbit hole in your reporting journey, but whether or not there is an appetite for adding new regulations in this space among our lawmakers?
I don't. The sense that I get is there needs to be more of a push from the consumer in order to make that happen.
Sure.
Because, you know, I spoke with the state AG's office. You know, they investigated, but they didn't send anybody out to the lab, you know, to really do any kind of inspections. So keep that in mind too. You know, what the work that's being done there. There's nobody checking to make sure that the health and safety is there. You know.
This is a very surprising and perhaps an unusual case. Do we know of any other dental labs that are operating in the state without? I mean, I guess all of them are unlicensed, right? Because they don't have to be licensed.
Right. Well, some of them, you know, there are denturists in the state which are basically licensed to run dental labs.
Oh, okay.
And so there are, I forget the number, there are about a dozen of them that are in the state that are, and that's what this National Board of Dental Laboratories is pushing for.
Gotcha.
For a denturist to be overseeing these dental labs, or a dentist to be overseeing them. And there are some dentists that have dental labs of their own, you know, because they just feel like they want the quality to be there, so they have their own dental lab to do that work. But it really, you know, begs the question. It puts the onus on the consumer. You know, when you're given a prescription for a denture, or a bridge, or a partial, or any kind of these dental products, to ask questions about the dental lab, where they're sending that prescription out to, or if you're going, you know, to ask the question, who's running it, who's making it, what materials are you using, all of that. Because I noticed in my reporting, there have been some questions about where the materials are coming from.
Sure.
And so that was an issue as well a few years back.
Amy Cutler, Derek Stahl for just joining us. Amy did a fascinating story about a dental lab in St. John's, Arizona, that is run out of the same building as a laundromat. It's the same owner. The owner does not have a license to operate this dental lab, nor does he need one, we learned, because it's not something that's licensed in the state of Arizona. Can you peel back the curtain and tell us, how did you hear about this? Such an unusual story. How did you hear about it in the first place?
I know. So it was actually a tip into the newsroom because there had been a dentist who is also in St. John's, who we spoke to in the story, who was just appalled. You know, he had gone to school. He specifically grew up in this community, wanted to provide the community with quality care. And so he had gone to the dental board, to the state AG's office, to police, and just nothing was being done. And so finally, kind of in this last-ditch attention, effort to get some attention to the issue, he alerted us to it. And I was really surprised. It was pretty crazy, And then I verified his information, and all of it checked out, which was pretty incredible.
Right. And so you do sort of, I imagine, some homework here in the building, but at a certain point, you kind of get all the information that you can get, and then you have to drive to St. John's, which is not close. It's like 4 hours away.
Right, exactly. And that's where your fingers are crossed.
Right, there's a story there.
It's all going to check out, because the other thing is, as you would imagine, the laundromat / dental lab does not have a real online presence,
Yeah.
So I'm looking it up on like Google Maps, and I couldn't really find much for what was there. So it was kind of, we weren't really sure, but when we got there, it was quite the story.
It is quite the story, and I guess the bigger picture story are regulations necessary? Are regulations important? Obviously, 13 states have decided that regulations are necessary and important, and if they are, that's a story. If they're not, that's a story. And there's some cost benefit, that you're balancing as a lawmaker, maybe considering this type of regulation.
Exactly. And I think also for insurance purposes, I would imagine, that there's some legality or some concerns for insurance companies and who they're paying this money for this work,
So are you saying, is it your understanding that insurers are covering the dentures that are coming out of this lab in St. John's?
No, so
They're not.
He cannot take
Right,
insurance
that
because
makes
he
sense.
is not licensed.
Right.
So all he's taking is out of pocket. So he says he cuts deals with his customers or patients. If they can't afford it, he'll work out payment plans and that kind of thing.
Sure.
Which the dentist who runs the dental lab, who I spoke to, said he does too. It's just, there are Medicaid and Medicare programs and all of that. So there's other avenues that they were kind of directing people at, as opposed to going to these dental labs that are not regulated and might have
right. So if you are a consumer who saw the story, does not want to go to an unlicensed dental lab, but you're struggling with the cost, what can you do?
So the dentist I spoke to recommends you speak with your dental provider. There are a lot of programs out there that people might not be aware of. It's also worth it to call your insurance company, to call Medicaid, Medicare, to look online to see if there are some programs that can help. And then there are payment plans that you can work out with these different dental labs. But the bottom line is if they're registered and they have more of a record, if you're not satisfied with the quality of the product, you have somebody to go back to.
Right.
With this guy, that's the problem, I think. It boils down to it's really hard to get anything back from somebody who's not licensed. And
right. Because the government has you can't go to the government and say, hey, pull this guy's license, because there's nothing to pull. It's hard to get recourse there.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Amy Cutler, fascinating story. So make sure to tune into Amy's story tonight at 9 o'clock on 3TV. We'll also have a preview on our newscast at 8 o'clock.
Yes. And it's also on at 6:30 on CBS 5.
See, there's a lot of newscasts. Well, thank you for being here, Amy. Appreciate it. And we hope you join us at 6:30 and 9 o'clock tonight on Arizona's Family.
Thanks for watching Arizona's Family. Watch us live wherever you are. Our mobile and streaming news app. You can also watch us on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, and Android TV. Subscribe on YouTube for live breaking news and video on demand.